posted by you/conscious_tension491. I, 35F, have 2 kids, 17M and 17F, and 1 stepdaughter, 18F, whom I met when she was 11. The other day, I was at my parents' house going over some estate planning, as I am the executor, and while reviewing, I saw that my folks had split their assets, with half going to my 2 siblings and me, and the other half to their grandkids, all to be distributed evenly. My stepdaughter was included. When I asked them about this, they said they wanted to be fair. Their estate isn't super large, but the sum would be substantial, think something like a new car. I told my parents that, while generous of them, I didn't think it was necessary and that it would be better to split the assets between their 5 grandkids. When we got home, my husband said he overheard what I said, and that I was being a jerk for alienating his daughter. I told him my reasoning was that she is the only child/grandchild/niece on both her parents' sides and that she would be set. Her grandparents own multiple properties, her uncles are fairly well off, and live in a high cost of living area, and, well, she's the only kid, and it's not looking like, at least on his side, that she'll have any cousins. Plus, their collective net worth is substantially more than my side. I also asked him if his parents included my kids in their estate, but he refused to answer. Still, he said I was being a jerk and accused me of not caring about her future. I think I was doing the right thing by looking out for my kids and their cousins. Am I wrong here? Edit. I was told to include this in the post. 1. I didn't argue with or pressure my parents to make a change. I simply mentioned that I don't feel it was necessary for her to receive a monetary amount. 2. My mom plans on giving her a set of family heirloom jewelry that is her birthstone. I think this is quite thoughtful. I'm not a big jewelry person, and she has other sets for the other girls in the family, so I feel this is okay. 3. My parents have seen her about 3 to 5 times a year since I met her. 4. My nephews and my kids do not have active relationships with their biological father's sides. My niece is a new mom and works at a restaurant. I feel that financial inheritance would be more impactful for them, even as such a small amount. 5. I know my stepdaughter is set to inherit at least 2 houses in a major U.S. city with a high cost of living. I found this out a while back after my husband asked me to help him organize his office. I had to read through papers to know how to file them accordingly. The paper was a certified copy and was drafted soon after we married. My kids were not included. I am not sure if it has been updated. I did not ask him about it at the time because I did not have an issue with it. 6. There is distance in the relationship, but I don't feel it's my fault. I can explain this. When I met her mom for the first time, she made it very clear that I wasn't her mom. I didn't see this as an issue because I didn't want to overstep, and as a mom myself, I could understand where she was coming from and respected her request. But as time progressed, our opportunity to spend time together became less frequent. At first, my husband had every other weekend visitation. It became less frequent as she became a teenager because she wanted to spend time with friends, hang out, etc., which I see as normal teenage behavior. Another factor is that we were never invited to be included in major celebrations for her. We usually celebrated her birthdays a week later because we weren't invited, my husband was, just not us. She's also never spent Thanksgiving or Christmas with us because her mom wanted those days. Again, I saw this as fine because she's her only child. My husband would spend holidays with her at her mom's house, which I encouraged because I knew the importance of father/daughter connections. We also weren't invited to her high school graduation. I think she's a beautiful and brilliant young woman, and I care for her tremendously. But it's challenging to develop deep, meaningful relationships with people you have little contact with. 7. For people putting me in the category of the evil stepmother, saying that I see her as other, don't think that I haven't been trying since the beginning. I include her in every way I can during the times that she's with us, by doing things like teaching her my family recipes, taking her shopping for clothes so she doesn't have to bring things back and forth, and attending every school athletic event I could. I've tried to include her in family vacation planning, but was told by her mother that unless the vacation occurred on a weekend we were scheduled to have her, she wouldn't allow us to have the time. This limited our options to local weekend trips, but even then, her mom came up with some reason she couldn't join, including surprise trips to another state. I even suggested a family cruise in lieu of a honeymoon to celebrate our new family but was blocked by her mom. My husband is allowed to take her on extended vacations as long as it's just the 2 of them. I've tried to be flexible around holidays by postponing things like Christmas morning so she could be included. This created frustration for my kids because they felt like they shouldn't have to put their lives on hold to accommodate her. One year, when the holiday fell on one of our planned weekends, I suggested celebrating Christmas on Christmas Eve so we could do the full family thing. My kids weren't thrilled, but they understood. In the end, we didn't end up spending any time with her, as her mom told us she planned to have a dinner party on Christmas Eve and needed my stepdaughter to help her prepare. When the time came for college applications, I was ecstatic to be asked by my stepdaughter to help her with them, but soon after, I was told that her mom hired a professional to help her get into her top choice schools, and I was no longer needed. I've tried to build a bond with her despite the little time we have. I've consistently told my husband that I feel we need more time with her to help strengthen our relationship, at the very least by him maintaining his every other weekend schedule. He's told me that ultimately, her mom is her mom, and she determines her schedule and how she spends her time. He's also expressed that he fears if he undermines her mom, he might lose the time and relationship he does have with her. I don't want to be the reason for any break in their relationship. His time and relationship with her haven't changed, so maybe he doesn't see the need for me or my kids to be involved. But if he doesn't advocate for us, then what am I supposed to do? Update 1 day later. I haven't had the opportunity to discuss all of this with my husband, as I was waiting to speak with my therapist to get advice on the best way to approach the conversation. However, I did receive a phone call this morning from my father-in-law, whom I see as an absolute angel of a man. Apparently, my husband told his mom about our argument, and my mother-in-law went off, which is how my father-in-law found out about it. He asked me for my side of the story, and I very emotionally told him everything as I listed in the original post. I told him it was not my intention to alienate my stepdaughter in any way, and that this whole thing has created a nightmare. After a deep breath and a slight pause, my father-in-law said that I did the right thing. A few years ago, he suffered a series of strokes, which prompted him to reevaluate the estate to ensure everything was in order. He is quite old, close to 90, and has a lot of underlying health issues. He and my mother-in-law share all of their assets, and she is also his power of attorney in case anything happens. Because they have a family trust, he wanted to include her and his sons in the discussion. He told me that he brought up the idea of including my children in the family trust. He proposed allocating 10% of the trust's liquid assets to be split between my 2 kids to help them get a start in life. He then said that my mother-in-law pushed back very hard, arguing that because my children were not biologically related to the family, they should not be considered. When he asked my husband for his thoughts, my father-in-law said my husband's response was that it was best to keep it in the family, but that he would consider including us in his portion upon his passing if he and I were still together. My father-in-law said this was surprising because, at that point, we were still basically newlyweds, and he didn't expect a new husband to think that way. My mother-in-law's response to that was unhappy, again stating that we weren't blood and that this was a family issue. Due to the stress caused by the situation and because of the recent strokes, my father-in-law didn't want to press the matter further. My father-in-law said that afterward, he pulled my husband aside to find out more about what he meant and to be assured that my kids would be included. He was basically told by my husband that he would do what was best for his family, and the conversation was dropped. Now, my father-in-law said he didn't push further at that point because he was getting tired from the conversation. But in light of what's happening and how my mother-in-law and husband are responding behind closed doors, he felt it was necessary to let me know. He said that my stepdaughter is set to be more than okay when the time comes and that my husband had asked to tap into funds to pay for her college so she wouldn't need to take out any loans, which he agreed to. He said he asked my husband if he would do the same for my kids, and my husband's response was that he would address it when the time came, as my kids did not yet know what would happen regarding college admissions. My father-in-law then asked if my husband and I had discussed this. I told him that, in conversations with my husband about my kids' education, the plan was for them to take out loans, finish college, and then we would help pay off half of the loans together once they graduated. My husband has never suggested that anything for my kids' college would be paid for through his family trust. My father-in-law was very apologetic, saying he should have pushed further as he loves us greatly and feels like he didn't do enough. I told him it was not his fault and that he shouldn't feel responsible for any of this, and that I didn't want him to feel obligated to make any changes or bring it up with my mother-in-law or husband because I knew it would create additional stress for him, and I wanted him to take care of his peace. He said that, although his desire would be to make changes, since he and his wife have a joint estate and she is his power of attorney, he felt it would be more trouble than it's worth. He is blind and has many mobility issues, so he depends on her for everything. He also mentioned that, based on what he's heard from his side, if he did update his will, they would likely contest it, which would create a financial burden for me, and he didn't want to cause a negative situation. I reassured him once again that it was okay and that we would be fine in life. I told him he wasn't responsible for anything that happened, and my intention wasn't to be added to the trust, but rather to make a point to my husband, which he said he understood and agreed with. He apologized again, we expressed how much we love each other, and he ended the call by saying he considered me a person of integrity, which is a rare gem. Now that I have this information, I feel like this whole situation has brought to light many things I hadn't considered about my marriage. Writing everything out, especially regarding how my husband navigates his relationship with his daughter and ex-wife, really put things into perspective. It makes me feel like we were never a priority for him. I'm not sure where to go from here. I plan to bring all of this up with my therapist and talk it through to figure out what I should do. But I no longer feel like the bad person for advocating for my biological family, especially since my husband and his side, excluding my father-in-law, have been advocating for theirs.